welcome back to our lobby GDC sessions, live from the GameSpot studio, mere blocks away from Moscone Center, where our Game Developers Conference is kicking off. Are you having fun there, Adam Saltsman?
Yes.
You are? Are you having fun there, Jim Crawford?
Basically, yeah.
I had to split the Saltsman. I wasn't leaving you out, Rebecca. I was just.
You were totally leaving me out.
You got to put. You're in a sandwich. You're in a Crawford sandwich here, a frog fraction sandwich.
Sounds nice.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today about all things video games. Jim, who are you? For the people who don't know,
I'm Jim Crawford. They're most likely to know me. I made a game called Frog Fractions. If you don't know what that is, then that's okay.
Yeah.
Most people in the world don't.
and it's the perfect way to play it is to not know anything about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want that to be your mental state when you go in to play it.
It's like when somebody tells you, "Oh, I haven't seen like Cabin in the Woods." You're like, "Oh, I wish I was you." Go watch Cabin in the Woods.
Good movie.
Go play Frog Fractions. You learn all about frogs and fractions and nothing else. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There's no other content in that game.
I'm delighted to have you here because you did one of my favorite GDC talks, which we'll get to in a little while, about retaining mystery in games,
right?
Which I think is something not a lot of people do, and it was a very interesting talk. And I'm also very happy to have you guys in as well, creators of what games are you shopping around at the moment, actually?
Well, we're shopping.
Shopping around Overland, shopping it.
Sweating and bleeding. We've been making a game called Overland for about 2 years, which is a sort of a survival strategy game with a lot of roguelike elements, procedurally generated, permadeath, all that kind of thing, but with more of a focus on scavenging and collecting and managing resources, and a little more than murder. There is some murder still.
Every game has to have murder.
It's not a video game if you don't have murder.
Yeah, there's a checkbox. I mean, we gotta do the thing. And we're also publishing a game called Night in the Woods, which is going to sound like a big exaggeration, but it's just the best written video game that we've ever seen, and we're just super lucky to be involved with it.
Can you tell us about the murder in Night in the Woods?
No, actually.
Okay, it's still under wraps. We're focusing on the plasma rifle.
If I even say yes or no, like even saying yes or no about it.
Have you guys fixed the rocket jumps yet?
Oh, not yet. No. We're still tuning. We've got a spreadsheet with all the basic weapon stats and everything, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah, if you can make the railgun be like, I can change the color on it, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're going to do a closed beta, and we have a really heavy crafting system for all the weapons, too.
Perfect.
So silencers, what else do you do on a thing? Handles.
Can you build your own levels using a very easy to use toolkit?
No.
Okay.
No, it's really hard to build levels, actually. It's ongoing brutality.
Yeah, that's what you guys have been doing for a couple of years, it sounds like. And you're also based out of Austin, the sort of crazy cool video game collective that seems to be down there.
Yeah, we actually kind of built the community over the last 12 years. Adam's part, one of the board members of Huecos Rancheros, which we run with a bunch of really cool people. And there's a lot of indies in the space now, and doing really, really cool things like across the spectrum of like marketability and like super experimental stuff. So it's a really cool place to be.
How did that come about? Was it just like Austin is like a cool place that was like cheap to live at one point?
Back in 2004.
Yeah, it was really cheap to live. It seemed like a trick, like somebody was always about to jump up and go, no, you can't actually get this like beautiful apartment right by downtown in the woods for $500 a month.
Jesus Christ.
Well, it's technically $650, but it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment.
Oh my God.
Like on a green belt.
Where did you come from?
We're from Michigan.
Okay.
That's the accent.
Right.
It'll come out. Just wait for the vowels.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's from New York, and he doesn't.
Evidently,
You can tell. Yeah. We moved to Austin. So when I went to school, there was no there wasn't really game school. DigiPen did exist. There was sort of a weird program at MIT. I could not afford to go to either of those schools. And
Art Center was totally out.
Yeah, that was not going to happen. And all those things were kind of a stretch too. Like everybody's trying to figure out like what does it even mean. Like DigiPen was almost like a Nintendo programmer feeder school or something at the time. It was real weird. And So it sort of like cobbled together a game-like education at a normal university, and that was kind of weird and interesting. And then had to pick a place to move.
Yeah, because we're from Michigan, which is like auto industry. So,
Yeah.
and especially in like the early 2000s, like I mean, there's no tech there. Like even Google didn't show up until after like we graduated. And
There was
left.
one
Wow.
game company there, and Brad Muir, formerly of Double Fine, used to work there, and we knew him back when we were in college, and that's where he worked on Alter Echo.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name of the company?
Oh crap! What were they called? It was the guys that made Descent.
Yeah, I remember where they were
Right.
I feel like it
located.
started with a V, maybe. That really
Can't
narrows
remember.
it down.
He's been around all over the place now. He's back up in Seattle.
I think
now.
there was. Was it Volition?
Was it
Was
Volition?
it connected? Was it an
No.
old Volition studio? I don't remember.
Volition
Actually, I don't remember
of
at all.
Saints Row fame?
I don't think. No, it can't be.
So who's down in Austin now then? Because you presumably went down when there wasn't many people
Yeah,
down there.
well,
So
we
there were
went-
a ton of people there when we got there, which is
Oh,
why
right.
we picked
When we
it.
got there, Ion Storm Austin.
Oh, cool.
They had just shipped Deus Ex. Origin Systems was still there.
Which Invisible War? Which? Oh no, sorry,
No, they hadn't
no.
yet. They were working on Deus Ex 2 and Thief 3.
Oh wait, this is back in 1999 or something.
This was like 2004.
2004.
Okay, was that? Oh god, my times are completely
Yeah,
off.
they hadn't shipped any of that stuff yet. They were still there doing cool things. And
Retro was there. They
Retro
had
Studios is there, and
just
they
done
still
Prime.
are. Sony Online Entertainment was actually still running Star Wars there. I think,
Oh, right.
like kind of the tail end of it. And we were like, yeah, we're going to get hired, get a game job.
Well, Adam was. I worked in PR.
Yeah,
Like I did media relations.
but like neither of us were,
Back in
because
the
nobody
day.
would hire me because I was like an idiot with no experience.
Right.
Who had no idea what they were doing.
That was the worst time to try to get into games.
It was a little rough.
It was way easier both like 10 years before and 10 years after that.
Yes. Yeah. And it was weird growing up because I didn't grow up with like good 8-bit computers either. So like in my teen years when I was supposed to be like a weird hacker learning assembly, like it just never happened.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just like this super weird gap. So I'd go to try again, like, well, what's your background making games? I'm like, I made so many Counter-Strike levels, like so many.
Yeah, Scout Snipes, that was me.
Yeah. And this one is like a giant. It's like being in a giant kitchen.
You
You're
are
playing
level
Counter-Strike.
lord.
Yeah, it's like. So yeah, it was real
That's
weird.
my
and
real
couldn't-
kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, but couldn't get a job or anything. So kind of went and got a normal software job that was actually pretty cool, and eventually figured out I would have been terrible at a AAA studio,
Right.
and I would have hated all of it. But like only found that out over the course of like years.
Why?
I'm a giant control freak. I have a huge ego. I have really, really strong opinions about things, even when I'm wrong. Like a whole bunch of reasons. I like doing things outside of work sometimes.
Right.
Like
That's
the
a
whole,
big problem at AAA.
That was back in like
Especially
2005,
in
2006.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
That was like right
gnarly.
around EA wife. Like, what was
EA
that?
Spouts.
EA
Yeah,
Spouts.
Spouts
Yeah, that's
was
what it
a
was.
thing,
Yeah, that was like a thing.
So is it,
Yeah.
am I right in saying that like your decision to jump into indie development it's as much like a lifestyle choice as anything else?
A little bit. I think
It was more like Adam had exposure to one particular thing, and it was like, oh my gosh, somebody like one person can make a game, and it was kind of a big moment for him.
Like we were doing a little bit of freelance work for AAA companies here and there, or doing like little freelance for advertising companies, and then it was just I don't want to like put it on a pedestal necessarily, but there was a really good like right thing at the right time thing when I played Cave Story for the first time.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, whoa, one dude, and he made this whole thing, and it's like aesthetically consistent. You know, it's not like an art game, but there's like the art and the music fit together really well, and it has this like really consistent mood. The modern version of this is like Axiom Verge.
Yeah,
Like I'm pretty
right.
sure some kid is
Yeah.
going to play Axiom Verge and find out how it was built, and
Yeah.
you just go, what?
While he was working in a AAA studio, it seems as well for a long time.
For a big chunk of it, yeah. So, so that was like, oh, you could do this. Like
like
this
your
is
light bulb,
possible.
yeah.
Like there's it's not easy. It took him like 5 years or something, but like you could do this.
What was your first game then?
It was, let's see. Post that, there was a Flash quote unquote game called Nano. It was a space shooter with one enemy type, one ship type. It was 70 pixels wide, but just blown up really big because then I didn't have to work very hard on the art. And there was one kind of enemy wave pattern, and that was it. And then like a little like NES soundtrack thing. That was a whole jam.
You're a designer who likes simplicity, though.
Yeah, minimalist.
Yeah.
Minimalist. And this was what just wasn't even a game. Like you could just play forever. There was no like.
It sounds like Space Invaders, which was a
Totally.
huge hit.
Yeah, right.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Indie. You
No,
pick
yeah.
a
Even-
classic.
Right.
And you just put your
Yeah.
own twist.
Even
on
on
it.
that, like it was an unfinished thing, and I was like, I don't want to make all these other spaceships. Like this game just feels like a whole lot of work. But I wanted to put in a thing where when you blew up the ships, they would drop little power-ups, and that's how you got your score. And when they would drop the power-ups would drift up toward the top of the screen, which is where the enemies come from. So if you wanted to kind of collect the things while you were shooting the guys, you kind of had to get up close. And like there was already like a little risk reward thing.
Yeah.
And I think that was like, whoa. This is like a math thing that you can do in a game, and this is like weird, and it's real time, and it's like this is really hard to do in anything else too.
Yeah.
Like if this is a feeling that you want, and like this is how you want people to relate to the thing that you made, you can kind of only do that in games. Is one of those things anyway.
Yeah. So when did Canabalt come around?
That was like
That's about 2 years.
Yeah.
About 2 years
It's
after
like
that.
3 games down.
Yeah.
Because that's where I started to like get visibility on you.
Yeah.
So like, was that the big sort of?
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before that, it was Gravity Hook, the Flash version of it, and then Fathom, which is
Yeah.
very much sort of like a experimental art game, which people either hated or loved, but it has the most beautiful soundtrack. Everyone always is like, "Oh, Danny, like it's the Canabalt music, like that's it." Listen to Fathom.
Yeah.
Like Fathom will like it feels like you're gonna weep while
It was
listening.
really- it was really-
so
it was really weird.
beautiful.
Writing it down.
Fathom was like a little art game, and it kind of got it made some people really really angry because it had a
I'm
it wasn't
so angry.
full frog fractions, no spoiler alerts, but the idea in Fathom is
Never
you're
go
like,
full frog fractions.
is I worked really really hard on making like a whole level of like a Mega Man cave story game.
Okay.
So you're a little robot guy with a gun, you can run around. It's got really really good physics, like. You shoot monsters, shoot these little guys that are hopping around. They blow up, and pieces fly everywhere. And it's got cool sound effects, and it's got this like Danny B before anybody even knew who he was.
Yeah.
This like really intense driving, like arpeggiated, like emergency thing. And then you get to the boss chamber, and the doors slam down. This giant like mantis head starts coming out of the top, and it switches to Danny B boss music, like full on. The background's flashing red, and you inevitably die, and then you fall into the water, and it's this like super soft, sad thing, and your gun doesn't work anymore. It just shoots bubbles, and you go like swimming around, making friends
Collecting
with
fish.
Oh really?
We called
trying
it
to
Sinking
find-
Robot.
Your soul is buried down there somewhere, and you find it, and you plant it, and it grows this black.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
This
Totally.
black, like infected tree, and it opens this gate at the bottom, and then all you see is yourself swimming up toward the light, and then all you see is yourself sinking while the credits roll.
I have
And there was
something
people
to
who were like, "That was the coolest Mega Man game that
Yeah.
I'd played in a long time," and then it got all stupid and full
Right,
of emotions.
arty.
It sounds
Fucking
incredible.
indies.
This is like I have a message for everybody I've talked to before this podcast, which is why didn't you tell me about Fathom?
And now it's been ruined.
Yeah.
It's,
Well,
it's still good to experience, I think.
well,
I think.
I just did.
And what is it about making those types of games then? What like because presumably I know it's not it seemed relatively cheap to live in Austin at that time. It was getting more expensive presumably.
I had a real job. Adam could really do whatever he wanted. Like
Yeah.
I like
I was
when
getting
Adam
contracts,
yeah.
but it wasn't really.
Yeah, when
panning
Adam
out.
went solo, like on the indie thing, and like he was doing contract art and stuff, like I totally had a real job at a software company where like
This
with
is actually
health
something I
insurance.
with health insurance,
Yeah,
which
this is
kind of
something worth
important.
diving in on. Like, indie development almost always means you have a day job or savings or a supportive spouse,
Right.
or parents.
Yeah.
So what about
Yeah.
yourself then? Because
Just
like
kind of ignore that
Well,
part.
I had a day job and then I had the Kickstarter.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Right, that's what I'm living on right now.
And I mean
we actually did a survey. We did like an informal Twitter survey and went and just gathered. We were like, "Hey, how do you guys pay your bills?"
Yeah.
And probably, I would say it looked like about 20 to 30% of normal indie devs pay their bills with sales from their previous games.
Right.
Or 20 to 30% of their bills are paid by that. And everything else, spouse, second full-time job, savings accounts, work for hire, like all these other revenue
I mean, and to get into
sources.
that 20%, you need to have at least released one game. So
Yes.
that's
yeah,
not even
that
an
somehow
option
ran
for
the
some people.
gauntlet and is somehow like
Yeah.
generating
Making anything.
Yeah.
revenue
Right. Yeah.
that you didn't already owe to someone else.
Right.
The
With
20
the-
to 30% sounds really high to me, actually.
Yeah, well, I think there's probably like some outliers and some
Yeah.
like you
Well,
know
it's almost
power law
Self-selection
thing going
bias,
on.
yeah.
It's also only paying part of it. Like we weren't very.
That doesn't mean like
clear.
it's not 30% of indie devs are not paying their bills through revenue share,
but they're
royalties.
using their revenue share to
yeah,
pay.
about 20% of their bills
Oh, I see.
total. Of like
that's
all
very
Yeah.
indie
different.
bills. Yeah, it's a pretty small slice.
So when did you stop supporting his ass?
Oh, so yeah, I had a really weird experience at like the job that I was at. Where I started out as like a glorified secretary at this software job, and then I convinced them to let me do tech writing, even though I have no background in engineering or anything. But I'm just really good at writing, and I'm really good at breaking things and like describing how things work to people. And then from that, after I learned all the software suite for the software company, I convinced the CEO to create a position, another position, to be a product manager, but I was actually more of a project manager. So
Right.
I was like this weird liaison between like our customer base and the development team. So I was creating features and stuff, and then designing these with like the development team. But I was also working directly for the CEO, which was sort of a really weird thing for me at this time, and I got super frustrated.
He was an idiot.
Right.
He was like a huge idiot.
Do you want to name him?
No, it was really a hard place. Like, it's hard to work for someone you don't 100% respect.
Yes,
and everybody else in that office was like, wow, like these, like one of the guys is still like one of my professional mentors, and I was super frustrated. I came home from like a trade show, like fetal position, crying to like the Juno soundtrack.
Yeah, like I
Not
came
my
upstairs,
personality.
just,
Where's my hamburger
just, like
phone?
under this fluffy down comforter with like headphones on, crying, listening to Moldy Peaches, and it was
Yeah.
like, whoa,
Whoa, we gotta change whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So at that point, like Adam had actually gotten this fairly lucrative advertising contract that had sort of bought us several months.
Cool.
And then Wordle came out,
Right.
and Wordle started. Like it just extended the time that it took for me to get a job. So like he had already bought me like 3 months, and then Wordle bought me more months, and then the recession happened.
Right.
So there were no jobs anyways, but we had bought so many months that I never actually had to go back. And
The
then
Wordle thing was intensely weird too.
was.
It boiled down to we accidentally worked on a Boggle clone for iOS.
we didn't even know it was Boggle clone.
I'd never played Boggle.
You've never played Boggle.
No,
What type of
I
fucking
have now.
childhood did you have?
No,
You invented Boggle.
yeah.
How bad
No,
must
this
it
is the
feel
worst part.
for the person who
I
invented
only
Boggle
found this out.
who didn't know what Boggle was? They must be like, I fucking did it. It's like,
Yeah,
I made
yeah.
Monopoly. And they're like,
Yeah.
fuck.
Adam
30 years
found out
ago.
it was
You
a
made-
Boggle
if you
clone.
invent Monopoly nowadays, you should be ashamed.
Yeah, they do that. It's called the Earth. It works pretty good.
It was a Q&A. At,
No. This was
Oh,
even
okay.
worse. Like I
That
didn't
was the
know. It was,
Q&A
I thought that I'd worked on this cool original thing. I know, like
Right.
for months,
Yeah.
I had no idea it was a Boggle clone because I didn't do the gameplay. Like
Right.
someone else had done a gameplay prototype and the art was a mess. And I was like, I'm gonna brand this. We're gonna
Yeah.
like shine this up. And I've got graphic design background. We're gonna do this, and did it, and it. Or like instantly became a top 10 iOS hit or something.
Right,
And
yeah.
I'm just like, I'm like,
just
wow,
for perspective,
we are so good at making
very
video
different
games.
in 2008.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yes,
that's-
yeah.
Yeah, it's not exactly Clash of Clans tier
Yeah. Right.
success at this point. So we're out at a video game industry event, and I'm on a train and having this conversation with, I don't want to name him because I feel slightly weird about it, but he's a really brilliant game designer that, especially at the time, I looked up to a lot. And still do. I just think he's someone who does really interesting work. And he sits down and he goes, so, what does it feel like to have made a crap load of money on a Boggle clone?
Whoa.
Did you know what Boggle was then?
No,
Oh,
I was
man.
like, what are you talking about? And he's like, here, let me show you, like a video, you know, here's what Boggle works. And I was like, oh, okay,
So it's out at this stage and
that's
everything.
cool.
Oh, it's been out for
Oh
months.
yeah, it's been out for
Oh,
months.
God.
Made like not Clash of Clans money, but we've paid our bills. We have a couple
Yeah.
years to mess around and make prototypes now, and only then found out that
crazy.
it was like, I don't know. I don't want to say it wasn't like totally illegitimate, but I still feel intensely weird about
Well,
it.
okay, clearly because you haven't done it again. Like,
No,
right? Like,
no.
that's because what happens then is like, you know, if you were powered by money, it would be like, oh fuck, great, I found the solution.
Yeah.
I'll just do that again.
We'll do Scrabble next.
Yeah.
Hello.
I mean,
Which
we'll
we were
do-
offered to do.
Yeah,
we
actually.
were contacted to do Scrabble.
Yeah.
So
Like,
we
you know what's
turned
really
it
good?
down.
Kerplunk. People want to play that
So
on
your
iOS.
partner presumably did know about this.
Yeah, I found out later. Yeah, they totally did.
Okay.
Exactly.
That was
they
on purpose.
that was
Yeah.
The project
Wow.
itself was just to clone Boggle.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Well, you did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're,
No,
you're-
people love that. It's still like
Really top 10 Boggle clones.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick
Easy.
it up. I'm gonna write it down here.
Yeah.
Fathom, Boggle. What was it? Yeah, perfect. Jim, let's talk about you for a little hot second.
Okay.
So, what were you working on that you were doing Frog Fractions in your spare time?
I was not in the industry. It's been a hobby for me for 20 years, on and off. But I was doing website backends.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I had been working on Frog Fractions for about a year when I was laid off from that job.
Wow.
And that was a few months before IGF 2012. And I was like, I'm going to use this as a deadline to finish Frog Fractions. And then I'm going to get another web programming job. Frog Fractions blew up. And here I am. Like, I took that as an opportunity. Like, I had given up on like I had known for a long time I wasn't cut out for like AAA development for the crunch.
Studio work, yeah.
But I decided this was my opportunity to maybe I can make a go at doing this stuff on my own terms. You
Was
know,
that the first game you'd made?
that was the first game that I made that anybody cared about.
Right. Yeah. Were you surprised that people cared about it? Because
When I released that game, I was making it for my friends. I had expected like 30 people to play it. But I had met Brandon Sheffield at a game dev show and tell 6 months earlier, and he had liked it, and he tweeted about it, and that was that. Like, it wasn't even officially released at that time.
oh, really?
Yeah.
It was just on a web page.
It was just
so
on
you
my
had it,
website, yeah.
Like almost the perfect way for people to find us. Like
Yes. Yeah.
when I stumbled across it, that felt so intentional. Like in this like brilliant, but why did this without getting into, because I really think that people should go play it if they like pause this and just go give yourself an hour and then come back.
Yeah, we're getting into spoiler territory now.
to sort of skirt around it, like it seemed like the reason why it was so wonderful was because like, oh, this rabbit hole exists in like a fucking table on like this most basic ass like website. It just keeps going and going and going. And you're like, huh?
A lot of that was deliberate, but a lot was also just really lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like people felt like a sense of like not ownership exactly, but there was like a sense of discovery.
Because
they were like, "Look what
you
I
get
found."
to tell your
Nobody,
friends.
yeah,
Exactly.
You won't believe this math and amphibian game that I've just discovered.
Yeah, it's like it was the most shareable thing. I mean, like that's what we talk about, like trying to get like people to purchase something or look at a website like GameSpot. Like shareability is like the most important thing. And you made something that people were like proud to like tell somebody else.
Strong
about.
viral content.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you follow that up again?
I can't tell you.
I've seen some forum threads. I've seen some forum threads.
I followed it up with the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That's the true follow up to Frog Fractions. Is the Kickstarter for Frog Fractions 2. Like that really was like when I was working out how I was going to do the Kickstarter. That was what I had in mind, was that this is actually the sequel.
The Kickstarter itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what people are funding is Frog Fractions 3.
that is amazing. Oh, that's so glorious.
And the question of how to follow up the Kickstarter, that's what I can't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So you've done something which like in some ways it's kind of like a dangerous proposition, because you're basically telling people
People are still playing the Kickstarter. People are still playing the Kickstarter, as far as I know. I've followed the forum threads, and the Kickstarter is not done yet.
Really?
I don't think.
Yeah, no, there's some game elements of that kicked off there that have then moved on to other places.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you basically were like taking people's money and then saying,
Oh, yes.
I'm going to make something,
The
but
premise-
you're not going to know what it is.
Right. The premise of the Kickstarter is, you just give me some money and maybe someday you'll find a cool game somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you what it is or where it is. It's not going to have my name on it. Because if any of those things were true, it wouldn't be a surprise.
Yeah.
And the point is the surprise.
How do you? Okay. So
How do you get away with that?
Yeah.
That's
It's astounding. Like everything about this is always just like, holy cow.
Yeah, no, that I shouldn't have gotten away with it. Like hands, like straight up, no, that I should not have been able to do that. But
it's so cool.
Is this like a chance for Kickstarter backers? It feels like in some ways the Kickstarter was like for them to troll you.
Yeah.
It was like, hey guys, back this, and then like stick me in this place where I have to invent all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be getting "Is this Frog Fractions 2" questions for the rest of my life, even after people know exactly what Frog Fractions 2 is.
Yeah.
We were talking about this before, how like if there's an amphibian in a game now, it's pretty mysterious. Like you have increased the overall value of video game amphibians impossibly.
Gex is going to come back
now-
because of you.
I'm proud of what I did.
We totally get it. Like, we have a video game that's coming out with an amphibian, and there is suspicion.
Is it Frog Fractions 2?
I don't think so.
You're all in the same room.
We are not at liberty to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is. It's conspiracy now. That's what it is.
How does that, has it been enjoyable for you since the Kickstarter happened?
My life's great.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't have, well, I have a little bit of money.
I mean, you're stretching the money pretty well.
I am.
Yeah.
I pay ridiculously low rent for the Bay Area.
You don't, you live in.
Which is all in perspective.
I live in Fruitvale.
Right, yeah. So you're not, it's not like you're sitting on, you know, somewhere in the mission.
And
like
I don't have
studio.
health insurance, but
Oh, God.
but my life is great.
Feel
Like,
free to buy health insurance. I think you probably.
maybe.
A single payer system is Frog Fractions 3.
There you go. Perfect.
I'd vote for that. Yeah, I make weird troll games for a living. This is my day job. It's amazing.
Would you be happy doing this for the rest of your life?
I
Because there's this thing about indie games that, like, before I sort of knew the space, like I've only been doing this, like covering games for like 4 years. Before I did, I was kind of like, oh, it's like a launch pad, right? It's like I get it. It's like I used to be a graphic designer, saying you do your own like freelance stuff until you get like a really well-paying gig somewhere, and it's like great. But, like, none of you people or any of the people that were at like the party last night or like whoever talked to ever sound like they ever want to get involved in AAA development.
Oh yeah, no.
It's like furthest things from your mind.
No.
Yeah, it's not a goal.
Well, we're all so darn picky. Like between like just being like massively picky and probably really, I mean, I'm not that hard to work with, but Adam's pretty darn hard to work with. I mean, like not
everything's fine as long as they do exactly what I want all the
like,
time.
as long as Adam can make the decisions, like there's no like anger and fury, really.
Right.
So like
There's
that's
no
just
power struggle.
Yeah, that's like a trait. Like indies have a passion to make their own thing, and they need to do it at their own pace. That's like a big deal, and that's like a deep, like seated character trait.
Yeah.
So like the idea of making someone else's thing is like so aberrant
Yeah.
that
Even going freelance was motivated by this like intense sense of almost divorce. The idea is like in the long term that this will pay off, but in the short term it was concerns that didn't include money at all, which was just that I wanted to, if I was going to work on something for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months,
right.
When I was done, I wanted it to be really, really good. And occasionally you would find yourself working for someone who would come in and would force you to make it bad.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is probably a super privileged position to be in, but I couldn't handle it. I was just like, no. I spent a whole bunch of time on it that I can't get back. Like, I can get more money later and I can lose it. Like, money is like very, very fluid, but there's this like time resource.
Yeah.
And it's just disappearing. And if I'm not getting to do something cool with it that turns out good, that's just brutal.
Like most people's jobs have things that they don't like to do, but most of those things don't.
Historically, most of my jobs included that.
But those don't take 3/4 of a year or 2 years or 5 years, which is the reality of game development.
Yeah, or being really in charge of something and then having someone come in at the end and make it worse.
Right.
And that's like a really hard thing if you're like, you know, a creative person and you have ownership over something and having someone come in from the outside and be like, no, this client wants this. And it's like
you're leveraging
terrible.
your expertise, your experience. You're saying like, listen, I've been doing this for a while. I've examined all the options. And they say, well, I don't like it. I'm like, well...
I mean, if you fail on your own terms, at least that's a learning experience. Whereas if you fail on someone else's terms, it's
Exactly.
like it's useless,
Yeah.
right?
And you can't, it doesn't
You just wasted my time. You
well,
can't
it doesn't
push
roll
it
forward.
Yeah.
It doesn't roll forward into a future thing. If you can do one really good thing, then you can do a Kickstarter about it. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. But can I ask you a question? Is that okay to do?
Go for it. Yeah.
I'm curious what prior life experiences equipped you for making troll games for a living.
Frog Fractions is almost
Because you're pretty good at it, I
autobiographical.
think.
Yeah, were you the guy on April 1st who like was fucking with all his buddies? Or
No, but that's mostly because I'm accustomed to April 1st jokes being like people coming up to you saying, "Hey, my mom just died." And you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's April Fools."
wow.
It's
Real top shelf April
Yeah.
Fools.
that's real
Good
real
job,
good.
guys.
Real
Good job.
I do tend to troll people, but always in a very like good-hearted way. I try not to like make anybody the butt of the joke. That's really important to me. So my superpower when it comes to making comedy games is that I will laugh at the same joke over and over and over and over again.
Right.
This is my theory for why comedy games are rarely actually funny. Like you need to be able to when you're testing a game, you're doing tiny tweaks and tuning, and you're seeing the same thing 1,000 times. And I was able to sit there and say, like, okay, how long should the bugs wait before flooding the screen during the dream sequence? You know, is half a second funnier than a seventh of a second?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I was able to trust my judgment as to whether, as to which was funnier, because it was funny to me every time.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
punchline is like so difficult to like. I mean, comedians don't even know themselves anymore. They test it on crowds,
Right.
and see how they laugh. So,
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you can't even do that with a game.
Well,
Right.
like prototyping is rehearsing then almost. Like
Yeah, kind of.
just to make it work and get all the kinks out, like you've automatically told yourself the same joke like 300 times or something. So if it's still good by the end of that, it must be pretty good, right?
My own preference is as you've been talking about. That's my guiding light. That's all I know. Like I don't think I could make a game for a hypothetical audience.
Right? Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm just doing things that every creative decision I make is based on what kind of game what would I prefer as a player at this point. You know, what would I enjoy most? And sometimes it's a long-term thing. Sometimes there's a little bit of deliberate frustration in there that I put in there just to pay off later. But it's always based on what would I like, and that kind of limits me to people who have the same taste as me in terms of my audience.
But when it must really land with those people. Like,
Yeah, well, and I'm just lucky that my particular taste meets. It was Frog Fractions had like 1.5 million players,
Jesus.
something like that. Well, it was a free
Yeah.
game, so
Yeah.
it didn't
Yeah.
actually make me any money. But
Well,
We
eventually.
never
Racked up those
Yeah.
server costs though.
Oh
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
soundtrack
Someday-
sales almost covered server costs.
Jesus Christ.
Someday ask us about Canabalt.
Oh, right,
An ad on
yeah.
it.
Bloody
Good.
hell. You did
Don't
a really
put music in your free web games is my lesson.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was so happy that I converted all the music from stereo to mono.
That saved you
Very
like
nice.
half your money,
Very
right?
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, one side.
Yeah.
You did a really good GDC talk a couple of years ago. I almost like stumbled into about like retaining mystery in
Yeah.
video games, which obviously, you know, like my job is to ruin mystery for people, right? Like where I interview
Sure.
people and
Sure.
preview games and
Well,
like, that's what we
hopefully,
do.
hopefully the listeners know what they're getting into.
Yeah, but there was something like really. It was fascinating to hear somebody talk about what's something should almost be self-evident, which is that like obviously the more you know about a game before it comes out, then the less interesting it's like. I don't know. Its landings are like that's the cycle that's the bubble that I now live in. That I probably didn't even live in before I worked in the press, because you can kind of like jump in and learn what you want. But like that's what advertising and publishers and media, that's what they're doing is trying to let people know as much about a game as possible to the
Right.
point now where we know basically everything about a game before it comes out.
Exactly,
and,
yeah.
like enjoyment is often based on our expectation against the reality as opposed to just the quality of the game itself. Isn't it kind of impossible though for like big AAA games to not tell people?
Oh, they just have to. If you're going to make, you kind of have to make mystery a feature of the game, and you have to build it into the design, and even the marketing strategy. It's very hard. But if it is as it is in Frog Fractions, if that is a fundamental feature of the game, it's just something you have to live with. You have to say like, well, 80% of people are probably not going to see the good part.
Yeah.
And that's not something that AAA is usually willing to accept.
And how do
Yeah.
you guys live with that reality as, again, trying to find like trying to get your audience share before the game comes out, trying to like shout louder than everyone else in a space that, you know, like today, even like worse than 10 years ago, there's so much more stuff happening in indies. Like, how do you balance that, you know?
We like, it's really weird. It's a really weird line to walk because like right now, like the only thing we care about when we're marketing something like Overland is that people have any idea what it is at all.
Right.
Like we just want like marketing goal 1 is
Like
basically
recognition
if
or
they
something.
see the word Overland, they'll go, oh, it's like a strategy thing. Like that's all we need to do is just get that. And it's really hard. It takes a really long time. And if we don't do it, I will be getting a job next year.
Right. Yeah.
I will be getting a new job. So like we have to do that. And
But in a lot of
You
ways,
know-
to contrast this with something like Night in the Woods, which we're also putting out, like we could legitimately spoil Night in the Woods if we
Right.
put out too much information. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna have this like, you know, beautiful 100,000 word epic thing that's like no one's ever created anything like this before, and like even people really close to the project, like outside of like me and Adam and the team. People don't know anything except what they've seen in like that demo that we've been showing for 2 years on purpose. We have been kept keeping it locked. People are like, does this game still exist? We don't see you talk about it much. And it's like, because we will spoil it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the story is, it'd be like someone coming up and being like, you want to know how Harry Potter ends? Let me tell you all about it. And it's like that's total BS. So like creating mystery.
Luke's dad. He's Luke's dad the whole time.
So we're like creating a mystery, like an anticipation. Like, why would they keep something locked down?
Yeah.
And that's part of the marketing story.
It's kind of weird for Night in the Woods in a lot of ways too, because it's not just a plot thing.
Yeah.
Like there's not, I don't even know if there's like even a single sentence we could say that would spoil things. But if we were trying to communicate what does it feel like toward the end of the game, that's actually going to be almost like a tonal spoiler or something.
Yeah.
Like it's going to take
And
you to
it
a
would be
place, and
horrible. Oh,
if
it'd
you
be
can see
awful
it coming
as
from
a player
too
to
far
know it.
away, or you have to see it coming, if the game doesn't
If
get
you're, like,
to
looking-
prepare you for it, you know, like the game. I mean, this isn't for all games, but I think for Night in the Woods, it's really important that people kind of go in and sort of experience it with a relatively clean slate, and then the game, everything is in there to sort of take you from step to step toward this place, and not as a gameplay concern, but really as like a tonal thing, as a thematic thing, as subtext, as like, and there's like if we try to do that in a trailer or something, it's just not going to work. So
you don't read chapter 27 of 45. Like you don't do that. You don't open up the book in the middle. So yeah, it's really, really important to be like we're going to take you from page 1 all the way through the end.
So you have to find a thing. You have to find this thing that'll bring people to the starting point.
Yeah.
And like a lot of our marketing approach now, the thing that we're the most comfortable with is like, how can we get people from knowing nothing about the game to getting them into this first little bit of it?
Yeah.
And find all the things, try to make the first part so interesting in and of itself that it's enough to market that part.
Yeah, because you can't even telegraph that there is mystery. You can't even like tip your hat to it because if you're like, you have to be so careful
Yeah,
there
even-
because
even
then everyone's
that is
looking
a
for
spoiler,
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
it's
you
like
can-
Spoiler alert, there
Yeah.
are spoilers. And then everybody's like,
Exactly.
oh.
It's like, do you remember like Spec Ops, the line, which was the like
Right.
third person, like it's another shooter. It's set in Dubai. It's
Super
like-
important that you go into that thinking it's
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
They literally had to market it like every other shooter.
Yeah.
Even though
Well,
they were doing,
what,
you know.
what that project has over Frog Fractions is that's a decent shooter. Like you could, if you buy that box in the store, you're actually going to get the game you paid for.
Anyway, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So they're almost like doing both. They're like,
Right, you have
they're
to
appeasing their
do
audience,
twice
but
the
also,
work, yeah.
aha, voila.
That's like, which is almost my favorite thing you can do. There's this movie from maybe the late 70s or early 80s called The Stuntman,
so good.
which stars Peter O'Toole and a few
right.
other folks. And it's totally that, like the premise is about a Vietnam vet who gets a job as a movie stuntman.
Okay.
And Peter O'Toole is this megalomaniacal director who's putting together this action movie, but he's trying to make a really certain kind of action movie where there's a bunch of wacky stunts and violence and all of that stuff, but underneath there's like a weirder, deeper message. And The Stuntman, the movie itself, features all of these wacky stunts and ends up becoming in structure exactly what the megalomaniacal director is making for the same reasons, to carry like another embedded message underneath. And so you can totally watch it as a popcorn wacky romance comedy that maybe is a little weird because there's a movie within a movie, but you can totally absorb it on a surface layer. Or you can start kind of like digging down and rewatching
Dig out the Shakespeare.
and thinking about what they're
very
doing.
cool.
And I love that. Like as a way of connecting with people, it just seems like if you're going to go all the way to the deep end and the deep end only, then maybe you don't get to say as many interesting things to as many people. Maybe.
Right. And that's even harder than in video games where you don't have that control you do over like movies, which is beautifully linear. Like I love being a video editor. I have total control. If somebody looks away from the screen, well, I guess I can't control that. But like in video games, you're trying to get people to figure things out for themselves. That's like another layer deeper.
Well, we do a lot of weird things. Like we did it with Canabalt, which we didn't provide any story or background. Like, why is this dude jumping out of a window? Like, and there's like stuff happening. Like, there's no story. You're just like a dude or a girl now, because you can play as either character, like jumping across rooftops. And it's the same thing we're doing with Overland, which is like you don't know what happened. Like there's no background that you're aware of.
Yeah.
Like there's just you're on a road trip. You're going west, and there are things coming out of the ground. And why. And all you know about like the people in this world are like the two tiny sentences we're giving you, which is something about their past and something about their present. And like it makes the player, especially if there's several people sitting around, sort of one person's playing while everyone's sort of arguing like you're playing Pandemic or something. Like they get attached to these people because they have these weird stories and have now imagined like an entire backstory for them and like how they might be interacting with each other. It's really, really fascinating to sort of like strip out like the candy that you're giving the player, I guess. Like strip it out and like let's like use something a little bit deeper. And like after a play session, are you gonna go out and like, so I was on this, like I was playing Overland today and like I had like Roberta and Frank and, you know, Zoe, and we were like in this car and we were in these monsters, and like, you know, Zoe was like prom queen and like, you know, she's like looking for her sister. Like you can create this, and we had this dog. Like you can create these like weirdo stories, and it's like super fascinating to see players do this.
Yeah, it's like the way people do it in like games like XCOM as well, where it's like
exactly.
you build this story around your own play.
Well, to me, it feels really generous. I really like the feeling of building a thing, and you let players have some of the fun that you get to have as a game designer. Like I always feel like I just it's not. I don't know how bad of a feeling it is, but there's like a distinct sense when you're playing a game and you feel like the designer took like all the fun.
Right, yeah.
Like if they're doing an RPG, like they came up with all the cool names for everything already, and they wrote all the cool backstories already, and they kind of like used up all of that stuff. And like I kind of miss it. It's one reason I'm just head over heels in love with Zachtronics and the kinds of games they make, like Infinifactory, for example, because so much of Infinifactory is super dangerous. If you're a game designer, stay way away from it. It is exactly like your real job, only way more fun.
I totally had to ban him.
Yeah.
Like we went a whole week, and I'm like, what the F?
I was sleeping like 3 hours a night.
We have 2 kids, okay? Like
I wasn't shipping code.
Yeah,
like
Adam
got
like
really bad.
barricading himself into the studio for like 40 plus hours staying up all night playing a video game. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Have you played Factorio
Get
yet?
No, not yet.
Factorio as well.
Yeah.
That's not allowed.
I think Big Pharma kind of like is functioning along the same lines. Like I love these games that like they let you into sort of the game designer circle a little bit. Obviously, Minecraft and other games do this too. It's expressive, but it's also this particular kind of sort of problem solving and lateral thinking and like filling in gaps and trying to figure out what's in there and why that's interesting. And
you're saying narratively as well that exists, where some people like enjoy.
Yeah, I think so. And it puts people. I think if you do it right too, it has a weird like second order effect of making them at least while they're in your game kind of be more inquisitive. I think you can deliberately, if you're careful about it and you leave these gaps for people to fill in, they will somehow like switch modes of playing or something. And I think it happens when you do something really unexpected too. Like when they get a big surprise.
When you make the player fill in the gaps, even something like, just to go, because I only ever talk about Frog Fractions.
Understandably.
An example from that, you have to hold down the mouse button to extend the tongue further.
Yeah.
And that's not obvious to people.
Yeah.
And sometimes they sit there for 30 seconds clicking, and they wonder why it's just like flicking out and retracting.
Yeah.
But the reason that I make the player figure that out is that and all the other things is that it puts them in the mindset of figuring things out.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Without that, like, first
And
leap.
you have to do it
faith.
early. I think if you even do like 3 or 4 steps where you're like, now do this, and all they're doing is they get into a mindset of how can I click through these screens the fastest?
Yep.
And that's not the right frame of mind. If you can get them into this other frame of mind where they're looking at the whole screen, they're looking for patterns, they start to get like more observant, and they start to be more willing to perform experiments.
So,
And like
Well,
observe
we do that
the
right
results.
away. Like in like the
Oh, yeah.
Overland design, like the very first level, we don't have tutorials.
right, yeah.
We
Actually,
throw
delete
you
it. There's a
in.
whole tooltip
Yeah.
system that's fully
We
functional, and
totally
all
got
of the
rid of it.
language is
Yeah.
written and spreadsheeted and ready for localization, and it's just disabled because I think it gets in and messes up.
But what you guys are
people's
talking
ability
about
to solve
is,
problems.
I think what you guys are talking about sounds like the way that I remember playing video games. That's the way, like, most
Yes.
of us. Like, whereas, like,
This used to be
We're-
mandatory.
No,
I was
this used to be the way it
we're-
was.
We're totally old. Yes,
But
you
like
used to
in-
like turn on your Nintendo and be like, "How does this shit
Yeah, and
work?"
figure it out.
How do you
Yeah.
start the game
The
at
difference
all?
is
Yeah.
that those game designers probably weren't thinking about it very hard.
right, yeah, yeah.
No.
They were
I
just
don't
like,
think- yeah.
we'll just-
Like,
here's an interface. I know it really well because I made it for a year.
Yeah, like my Amiga 600s right there. I don't think
Right.
there was any game I ever played on it that had a tutorial.
Right.
Whereas like right now I'm playing, that's and what you guys talking about is that, and then when you look at what's happening in like big AAA games, it's
Yeah.
like hand holding the entire way through.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the reasons that Dark Souls, like, oh crap, I went there.
You did.
I'm not
You
supposed to talk about Dark
totally
Souls.
went there. He'll go there and we won't leave.
I'll just
There.
one short thing.
One
One short
thing,
thing.
and then
One short thing.
ban
I
you.
think that's part of like Dark Souls just leveling people.
Right.
Like being such a surprise is the game just starts. It has it sort of has a tutorial, but it's awful.
Yeah.
It's like really bad. The game starts, it's like fight a skeleton. The skeleton murders you. You died. That's like the very first thing that you do. And it's such, you can't play it like a normal AAA game starting right away.
Yeah.
There's like right off the bat, there's no way to even get to the first area without losing some of your preconceptions. And I think it preps you to start throwing more of that stuff away and to start playing it by its own terms. It feels like a game from like an alternate timeline
Yeah.
or something.
And then Dark Souls has now prepped millions of players for games like that.
Yeah.
It kind of paved the way in a lot of respects.
I think so.
I mean, so that's like that's a problem then, right? Because like Dark Souls 3 comes out and it's like Frog Fraction 7.
But
It's like how do
it's
you?
a problem for them.
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm actually really curious how they're going to handle that.
Yeah.
Like even taking this back even a little bit, like this lack of tutorial and like indies work on such a small budget and a small space. Like we oftentimes don't have the time or the ability to hold focus groups, or like we have to design things to teach the player as we go, because otherwise like I mean we'll lose you.
Yeah.
Like if you turn it on and we're stuck in like some boring crap for like, it's not like there's going to be a payoff. Like if I can just get through this, I'm
Yeah.
going to be looking at like this thing that took 2,000 people over 10 years and $7 billion to make, and we're on a shoestring budget, like 3
Yeah.
people for 3 years, and it's like
especially at a
we
trade
have
show.
we have to lock
Right?
you in
Yeah.
as soon as possible
Yeah.
to understand. Like no, it's worth it. I promise. I don't actually have to. It's going to be more fun to figure it out than having to handhold you through.
In a way, it's nice. Like what would happen if AAA did start doing this? Because our work wouldn't
Oh,
stand
man.
out anymore.
No. Right,
That would be a disaster. If
That's
they were
your-
if they were all clever and letting you complete these gaps and everything was shiny and covered with blood all the time, like it would be over.
So that's your unfair advantage is that you're doing.
We'll
you're
have
doing
to start
there's
adding
there's
blood
like-
to everything.
Yeah,
That's what'll have to.
Hidetaka Miyazaki is doing it, and nobody else. And it's like,
Yeah. But I mean, like,
There's
so
still
how,
room for us,
Like,
it's
retaining
fine.
that must be because then you're trying to get people at like a show like this to like play the game for more than 2 minutes while they're like looking over their shoulders at everyone else who's watching them playing the game. It's like a
Well,
difficult
it's cool.
balancing
Like
act, right?
at a show, especially like, and we do this a lot. So when we go to shows, we take like our whole library. So we have like this
Right.
tiny little 10x10 with like 4 games in it, and like people
little
just
mini arcade
packed
kind of a
in.
thing.
And when people have to figure out how to play, people behind them start shouting and collaborating together.
right.
Like, and not in,
In
a,
a
bad
positive
way,
way,
in
or-
a
Yeah.
really positive way. People like watching people play Overland at a show is fascinating. We just stand back and we're like, let's
My
see
favorite
how this
thing is
happens.
when-
And they just play
yeah.
together because they're like, no, this is how you do this. And they don't know each other. They didn't come to the booth together.
Yeah.
They're just like figuring it out together. And that's like the whole point of Overland. Like that's our goals. We want people to play together and create stories together in this like really cool like post-apocalyptic space.
Sometimes a group of 3 people will come up, and you can tell that the wrong one started using the mouse.
Yep.
Because one of the friends is just like, no. And finally, just give me that. Give me
the mouse.
You're doing it wrong. It's awesome.
So what's your guys' main objective then when you come to something like GDC? Because there's like people come for like biz dev, people come because they're trying to like, talk to marketers, they're trying to A/B test their games, they're trying to show it off to press. Like, what is it for you guys?
It's a lot, yeah. All of the
Yes.
above.
Yes, exactly.
A big thing, like especially as an indie, we work in our house together. We do have a great network of people in Austin, but like our best friends are scattered throughout the whole world, and those are the people. Like those are our coworkers. They're working on different games and doing different things, and the only time that we actually get to see like the only people in the whole world who are doing what we're doing is like while we're in San Francisco for GDC every year.
Right.
And we spend all week running from place to place, like high-fiving people as we like fly through the park. Basically, yeah.
Stairway fist bump.
People are always like, oh, look at all this like colored hair and like all this hugging. Like, what the hell is wrong with all these damn indies? And it's like, no, don't you understand? We're so alone for so much of the year. And we finally are like in one place. Like people will fly here without a GDC badge just because we're like it's sort of like refueling our like.
I don't
friend.
have a badge this year.
Yeah,
I'm just here.
Just
I'm here to meet people.
to be with people who understand what you're doing, because like you have to be passionate and crazy to make indie games. I mean, like it's hard and expensive, and like there's no guarantee you're going to make a cent. But
it's a bad idea.
It's a
basically
really bad idea. If you want to make your millions, man, do something else.
No safety net either.
No, not at all.
Which is always scary. What about yourself, Jim? What's the reason to come here? Apart from the fact that you live across the bay.
I'd just be in Yerba Buena Park anyway. I'm literally just here to hang out with all my cool friends. The first year I came, it was sort of a business thing, and I sort of had business meetings, and the second year I think I had one press, thing, and I wouldn't be talking to the press at all if you hadn't invited me to this.
Right, yeah.
Not because I don't like them, but because it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, like, come in and talk to us about the game you're not going to talk to us about.
Right, exactly. But I love having conversations. And so I've been wandering. Well, I've been walking the earth.
Yeah.
And I know so many of these people by now. This is my 4th year, I think, that I can just sit on the lawn. Oh, there's somebody I know. Hi. And sometimes it's Nick Sutner at Sony, and I sort of have a business meeting.
Yeah. But
most of the time it's just hey, it's my friend.
Do you feel like you come away from like an event like this rejuvenated, or because like working as an indie, it does sound like a rather solitary
it's
experience.
both because I'm a huge introvert, and so I'm utterly socially exhausted by the end of even the first day, frankly.
Yeah, like 11 a.m., 11:30 a.m. starts to kick in. You're like, no, I'm done with this.
Yeah, I was at that party last night, and I was like walking. I was thinking, this is a whole room full of people who would probably rather not be here, except for everyone else who's here.
Right.
No, exactly. Yeah, we'd rather be at home working on our thing, except in this one case where all the other people who understand exactly like who I am and what drives me, we're all in the same room.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like, it's business, it's press, it's exhausting. Like Adam and I do GDC run every morning, so we're like out running. Yeah, we're crazy people. Like we wake up at like 6:45 and we go back to our Airbnb or hotel or whatever at like sometimes 4:30 a.m. And we sleep the whole way home and feel like garbage next week. But it's like we have this 1 week to cram in as much like people and business and whatever, and then go back
tight
and
balance. You start to feel like, especially as a programmer, you're like, well, I've got all these resources in one place, and I'm going to like min-max this and make sure we have a meeting like every 45 minutes and like say hi to everybody, and we get all the high fives, and then. But then also you're trying to not be dead.
Yeah,
right. It's like your kind of your balance.
Last year we barely broke out of here without being dead. So this year
was pretty close.
We scaled back the lack of sleep
by doing runs every morning.
Well, no, we do that every year.
Oh, really? Do you avoid the hills?
Yeah. Yeah, because
we run it pretty flat.
We encourage people to stop drinking early or drink very late so they show up still drunk if they're going to run with us.
No middle ground.
No middle ground.
You got to cut it off at 10 or 4. Anytime in between is trouble.
Fair play. I guess sort of like last conversation point to talk to you guys about is, you know, there are a lot of myths about indie development. We were just touching on a couple of them there. You know, you guys were based down in Austin when it was like cheaper to live there. It's getting more expensive. There's more people in the indie development now. There's also more ways to buy indie games. The word indie has become this fucking, like, it doesn't really mean anything anymore because it's so scalable. But just like to ask a really annoying journalisty question, is it harder being an indie developer now than it was 5 years ago?
That actually, it kind of depends on what parameters you're looking at. If programming, way easier.
It's way easier to make games.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, but it's probably harder to make a living.
To like get your game seen, is that the sort of main problem?
Yeah, yeah. Like,
When to sell it, it's hard. Like if you have something like really special that you worked on for a long time, and you feel really strongly about it, and maybe it's you know, an hour or two of kind of handcrafted something special that you really loved, and so you're like, I'm gonna sell some copies of this. I'm gonna get like $5 because it's about as long as a short book or a graphic novel or something, and it costs half of that, so that seems reasonable. But also, the Batman game with the tow truck car and the like 5 different cities, that's also $5.
Yeah.
And it has like 200 hours of criminal punching, right? So it starts to feel like there's like a weird, like a lot of normal business things seem like they don't really apply or something. It's really strange. Like, should my game be 20 cents, or like
exactly, yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Which is like a ludicrous
And
idea.
how do you find
the
the audience that actually has played enough of the Batman games or has already finished that one and they are looking for something kind of new or whatever?
Like Capo Santa ran into that problem with Firewatch, where people were like, "Oh, $20, like really $20?" And then like Jonathan Blow with The Witness is like $40. Like is there like nobody? There is no like the perception within the consumer.
Well, the
Perception-
games
They
don't
really
sell
know.
out.
Right.
You know, and they're kind of there forever. And as someone brought up during the show, you end up in a weird position because you're not just competing with, like in fashion, maybe you're competing with all the new designs that are out this year. And that's true in games too, but you're also competing with everything that's ever been made in the last 30 years, and all of it's $1.
Yeah.
So, like, where do you fit into this? It's, I don't know. David Bowie would know.
There's also like just a perception of like what an indie person is. Like
Right.
if you make indie games, like are you like a single person in a basement somewhere living with their parents, and like, you know, you don't need to make that much money. You didn't spend anything to make it.
You're just lazy making a pixel art game anyway.
But what the general public doesn't understand is actually how expensive it is to make this. We talk about sustainability a lot. Like that's sort of like our thing. You know, we are a married couple. Like, you know, we're in our mid-30s. We have 2 children. We have we used to. We just sold it. But, you know, modest house. Our budget is exactly the same as it was before we had children.
Right.
I just cut all the fat around it because we have a monthly burn rate that we have to hit, which ties into like the budget of making our really modest budget for like a 3-year project. But in order for us to make anything else is we have to price it to pay for those 3 years because we just emptied out all of our bank accounts and pay for like the next game that we're going to make. So the idea that you can spend 3 years on something and like sell it for $1, like how many copies of this do I have to push to make my next game? And like
It's all weird and
Yeah.
super fluid because, like, when it's cheaper, it's going to sell more copies. And if it sells more copies and more people play it and they like it, then they're going to tell more people. And so, like, that user base is growing.
Yep.
And then it's, like, growing exponentially, potentially. But if just nobody plays it or it doesn't really resonate with people, then maybe 3 years ago you picked the wrong thing to spend 3 years making.
Yeah.
That's hard to fix.
there's
So-
It's like betting on a horse before it's been broken.
So
there's so much tension like in like the price and the quality and the length, because you know, like the 2 games that we're working on are actually, they have like Overland has like infinite replayability and like Night in the Woods is just, it's the same length as a lot of like AAA games. Like 3 people are making a 10 to 14 hour game and it's crazy. Like that's like that size of game with 3 people is astounding.
Do you feel like that's what you need to be doing now, though? Like that's what it.
I think it's one way of sort of
mitigating
tackling the problem.
It's one way of mitigating sort of the the pushback against like you only made a 2-hour thing.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, that 2-hour thing took me like 3 years and it's really innovated.
There are a lot of 2-hour long games that have been super successful.
Yeah.
And have like
Exactly.
really caught on. So like it's so hard to make any kind of, sweeping anything, but we
But
do
it's-
look
it's
at
things
like,
you have to consider.
Yeah, if you want to pay bills, if you want to have health insurance and all that,
'Cause it's expensive.
stuff.
Yeah, raise kids or
Yeah, like
Being a
we
real
definitely
person
look
is expensive.
at some math and we go like, well, this game would take 3 years to make and it's only going to be an hour long. If people are going to be really, really upset if that hour isn't just every minute of it needs to be devastating, or the ending needs to be just the most unbelievable ending to anything that ever happened. And even then, it's going to need to be priced in a slightly different way. And you kind of look at all these factors and try to make a good guess about what's going on.
But even then, like surely the process of game development is iterative in of itself. So that means that like the game that you probably projected you're going to make, like 3 years for
Totally
a creative
different.
person is like
Our
it's a long
post-
time to stick
yeah.
to a plan.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Our postmortem
Oh,
on
yeah.
Overland someday is going to be quite a thing because
What?
we started out making a mobile game. And
Right, yeah.
It is not a mobile game.
Yeah, it's just a thing that happens. Our little metaphor is usually like, you can, the size of a seed and the size of plant that grows out of it are almost completely unrelated.
Right.
Those things just have nothing in common, and you just have to, you just kind of, I don't know, there's some luck involved in this quote unquote
guesswork.
career.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
we wish you the best of luck with all of your projects.
Thank
you
you.
so
Thanks.
much, all three of you, for coming in
Thank you.
and talking to us today. Jim, I don't even know why I'm asking this question. For people who want to know more about Frog Fractions 2, where should they go?
Why don't you just watch my video on preserving mystery in the age of spoilers?
Perfect.
It's
Yeah.
my pinned tweet right now. I'm Mogwai Poet on Twitter.
That's a fucking great Twitter username, by the way.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's a GDC Vault, right? It's just
It's
there.
not in the vault.
Oh, really?
It didn't
Okay.
get
Just on
recorded.
YouTube.
Oh, right.
It's
on
on
YouTube.
Vimeo.
Oh,
Perfect.
right on.
Yeah.
That hot new up and coming video platform.
That's right. Yeah.
I like it. Awesome. And what about you guys? Overland, when can we expect to see it? Or
So a couple things. So you can sign up for the mailing list and this is important. You want to sign up for the mailing list for Overland at overland-game.com. And we are going to be starting a paid private alpha
Oh, cool.
soon with limited keys that are going to be released. So the only way you're going to be able to find out about that is actually through the newsletter because we are sort of controlling the scope as we start rolling out.
There's going to be unlisted sites, not Googleable, kind
Okay.
of
Yep.
word
So
of
this
mouth
isn't an
only
early access
thing.
Steam thing. This
Nope,
is-
early access will come later. We want like people who are passionate about this genre who like want to sort of get in and like play our cool thing that we're building and like be active on the forums and like it should be really cool and it's going to be like in the next few weeks.
Cool, and people should check it out. I've been super interested in it since for the past couple of years. I was very happy to see what was it on IGN a couple of days ago. You are now referring to it as XCOM meets Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
That's a real just as somebody who writes headlines for news stories and stuff. That's a real good one.
Good.
Yeah.
That's our strong elevator pitch from our business background.
I like it. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming in and enjoy the rest of your GDC.
Thanks.
Cool. And thanks to everyone for listening or watching this, wherever you're consuming this hot piece of content. If this is on your iTunes RSS feed or whatnot, we'll have another one of these up tomorrow. Matt Lees and Khalif Adams are going to come in and talk about the history or the current and the future of games coverage. And if you're watching this on GameSpot or YouTube, make sure you subscribe and we'll have more cool GDC stuff up post-haste. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.